It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Trajan Wealth brings you this portion of the program for all of your retirement needs. They're going to take care of you top to bottom. Anybody in retirement who can help you out, fiduciaries at Trajan Wealth. All you have to do is trajanwealth.com. Joining us on the program right now, David Cobb from CBS Sports on the program here with us. David, thanks for being with us, man.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
How does this college football playoff committee tweaking the way that they're going to evaluate teams? There's part of me that is kind of cynical because I've been in sports media for a long time, and so that's the way we get, which is, okay, this feels like it's going to benefit some of these SEC and Big Ten teams who might lose a game along the way, and this is kind of feels like it's a built-in excuse. Or does it help the larger powers that be, everybody across the college football landscape?
Well, I think it does. It places a greater premium on your out-of-conference games, not just on an individual team basis, but for your league as a whole. Like, for example, like the Big 12, you got Baylor against Auburn in week 1. Well, if Baylor wins that game and Utah beats UCLA in week 1 and the Big 12 gets off to a pretty solid start and has a pretty good head-to-head record in these other matchups against Power 4 leagues, it could really serve them well going forward. Because you look at college basketball, there is a pretty healthy respect for strength of schedule in college basketball, and people don't want to acknowledge this or realize it or fully even comprehend it. But on the basketball side, what you do in November and December goes a long, long way towards juicing the metrics, either for good or for bad, that define your league and by extension your team when it comes down to seeding for the postseason. And I think if we can move towards that in college football in an equitable way, that's probably a good thing. But this college football playoff announcement about strength of schedule and how that's going to be factored in, it was kind of light on specifics. Right. And so I think that's kind of what we're all waiting to see is, okay, like you can say this, but in what specific ways are you going to judge and evaluate a resume? I don't know if we need a net and a quad system like we have in basketball because that's not perfect either, but at least it's quantifiable. At least when you're going into a game, you know how it's going to be slotted and ranked and evaluated. And we don't quite have that with today's announcement. But I think strength of schedule is something that for the SEC in particular, there's this push from the outside. Hey, go to a 9-game league schedule for crying out loud, and I agree with that, right? Because it would be better for everybody except for the coaches that have a bowl game incentive. They would maybe not love it, but everybody else would appreciate it if the SEC would play fewer patsies and go to a 9-game league schedule. But the only way to really make them do that is to reward playing higher quality opposition. And if we can get closer to doing that, then that's a good thing.
Well, there's a lot of debate all along, all over the country about what playoff format there should be, and these conferences can't agree on that. But would you agree that the more auto bids would actually be good because it would reduce the amount of impact that the committee actually has in choosing these teams? Or do you think the system the way it is perfectly fine?
Maybe I'm a contrarian, but I actually don't hate the idea of there being a set number of playoff bids for each conference. Now, I realize, there are some hurdles with that. For example, if it's solely based on your conference ranking, then there's really no incentive to play anyone out of conference because it's unless you're really thinking you're going to get one of the 2 at-large spots. I mean, what's the carrot to go out there and schedule a marquee power conference opponent out of conference? So there's that element to it. But I mean, I was kind of surprised, like when I believe it was Brett Yormark at the Big 12 was out there against a system that would grant 2 automatic bids to the playoff for the Big 12 because, the Big 12, to its credit, there's so much parity, but it's also one of these leagues where you could very easily have your top 3 or 4 teams all have a couple of losses. and in that scenario, you're going to be hard-pressed to get a second team in to the playoffs. So, I would kind of be okay with rewarding leagues with a set number of bids, so long as there were at least a couple of that large spots after we get through with all that. But you can miss me with all this 28 team nonsense that Petitti's putting all that out there, and I'm just like, man, why don't we give the 12 team format a little time to breathe? Like, was it perfect last year? No, but it was great. It's a good format because you reward the top 4 teams with a bye. If you're 5 through 8, you're rewarded with a home game, and then you have intrigue deep into the season over who's going to get spots 9 through 12. And we're already trying to rip the thing up without any sample size on it. And I would prefer that we give 5 or 6 years of a 12-team format, tweak it as you go, before you go back to the drawing board and rip the whole thing up.
Not good enough. We've got to get as many teams in there as possible. That's the way everybody
and the
does
most
it.
possible from the SEC and the Big Ten.
Well, I just think it's funny, too, because we had 1 year of it, and we might get this next year of it, and that might be it. I mean, that might be the end of it. So, yeah, look, we're also the kind of people that like to see bowl games that matter. We've watched enough of our lifetime of terrible bowl games that, hey, they can have the crappy sponsor with the bad name attached to it. Just make the game mean something. And if this is the way that they do it, I'm okay with it. Does college football suffer from – I mean, obviously maybe the 16-team playoff is as much as we could probably handle, but does it end up suffering from the fact that people are like, okay, we're playing these games into almost February at this point, it feels like?
I'm not a fan of how long it seems to be dragging out. You lose interest, you lose steam, because the sports fan is trained for college football to end in early January. That's no longer the case. But here's what they're not going to do. They're not going to sacrifice weeks of the regular season to accommodate an expanded playoff. And so I get it. Everybody's saying, well, now these athletes are employees. They're making a lot of money. So they can tough it out and grin it out and bear it and play a longer schedule. And if they have to play 17 or 18 games, then, tough luck. If you don't like it, go get a real job. Like, I get all of that. But at the same time, though, college football, it has no business. In fact, it cannot realistically compete with the NFL playoffs. I mean, it just can't. I mean, I'm from SEC country where college football is king. Obviously, there in the state of Utah, college football is a huge deal. But, I mean, don't kid yourself. Nationally, if it's a college football playoff or NFL playoffs, 90% of networks or stations or outlets are going to prioritize the NFL, and then you just sort of relegate yourself to second fiddle. Whereas if you get this thing knocked out earlier, you have the eyes and the attention of the nation through early January. You take it any farther than that, I think you lose that. And I think we started to learn that a little bit last season.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on the Big 12, which, I mean, it's anyone's guess this year, just like it was last year. I don't know if we're going to see the complete flip that we did this year last year, but I wanted to get your take on just your overall thoughts on the conference and who you think possibly could be in that Big 12 championship game. What excites you about this conference this year?
Well, I love that we get a meaningful game in week 0. I mean, this Kansas State-Iowa State game is one that could have not just conference title, but maybe even college football playoff implications. I mean, those things go hand in hand. But, I hope that turf is in good condition in Dublin, because, that game is going to be one that matters. It's not a preseason game. It's not an exhibition. There's no Hall of Fame game in college football. It's you kick it off, and it's the real deal out of the gate. So that's fun. I think that's a really great showcase opportunity for the Big 12, because with everybody itching and yearning for real meaningful football, you're the power conference that is providing it in week 0. So a good showcase opportunity to start for the Big 12. And then, it's parity. It's unpredictability. I don't actually mind the fact that they scrapped the preseason media poll, because everybody's just guessing. And that's kind of what makes the Big 12 fun, is the unpredictability of it, the parity. This isn't a league where there's just a ton of 5-star talent all over the place, although Texas Tech is certainly trying. But I think that works in the league's favor, because you never know. You turn on a Big 12 game, what the outcome might be, and that's different than that makes it different than every other league in college football. So it's a very hard league to predict. I tend to go with something you can trust or something you could know. Kyle Whittingham fits into that nicely. Matt Campbell at Iowa State fits into that nicely. Kalani Sitake at BYU as well, with what he's built there over a long period now. So those are the teams that I tend to gravitate towards because, generally speaking, they're a little safer. I mean, Mike Gundy certainly tested me on that last season. It's a fun league. I love the caliber of coaches that you have in the conference because, look, is it Nick Saban and Kirby Smart? I mean, I guess not, but you do still have a handful of coaches who I would absolutely consider among the 15 or 20 best in the sport who are in that conference.
Well, one of the things that we were looking at with this too is as the season starts up, and people make a lot about teams that have cupcakes on the schedule, and do you think that going back to just kind of the idea of how they're going to start grading teams and maybe not punish them as much for losing games, but we also are losing games against quality opponents, but college football has this thing too where it's like, it's not just losing a game, it's about when they lose it on the schedule. How does that work into it? Because if you lose a game against a team, later in the season, it seems to ding you much harder in college football than it does in any other sport.
Yeah, that's a interesting observation, and I think you're kind of on to something there because we tend to give grace to teams that lose early and then improve.
Yeah, we forget
as the
about
season.
it.
Yeah, but you look at it's what have you done for me lately? What's happening now? I mean, it wasn't even a loss in terms of the win-loss column, but you go back to Florida State a couple of years ago, and it's like, well, they lost their starting quarterback, so we're going to leave them out of the playoff,
right.
And it's like. But you have to respect 13-0.
Right.
I mean, come on. That was the snub of all snubs because you're just so enamored with what's right there in front of you. That's a problem, especially when it's not like the NCAA basketball tournament where you have 68 teams. And, I mean, realistically, is the first team left out a team that could go and win the national title? No, probably not. But in college football, I mean, you think about it, Ohio State was, what were they, 9 or 8 going into the college football playoff last year, and you got these SEC teams that like Alabama that got left out and Ole Miss that rated as a top 5 team in a lot of the power metrics, so these are consequential decisions that are being made over who gets in and who gets left out. And if you introduce too much recency bias to that, then I think you discount the full body of work. And, that's where I kind of think, maybe in some modified form, like that quad system would be useful, if for no other reason, just to sort of categorize the wins and the losses. And maybe you did lose a game in November, but it was a quad 1 loss, so to speak. And look at what this team did in September, and that easily lost in the shuffle when you're just looking at who lost this week, who won this week, and using that as your basis for moving teams around.
You had some bold predictions for the Big 12 this year, and you talked about quarterbacks. I thought that was interesting that they'd have more quarterbacks throw for 3,000-plus yards than even the 18-team Big 10 and the ACC. How impressive is this crop of quarterbacks in the Big 12? And if you don't have one, what chances do you have of winning this league?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm going through an exercise now of ranking the top 50 quarterbacks in college football.
Oh, wow.
And so, I'm sure no one's going to be mad about that.
Get your mentions ready.
Full disclosure, Devin Dampier will make the list. I'm pretty high on what he could bring to Utah. As for Bear Bachmeier, I guess we'll see. He's not going to be on there to start, but you never know with true freshmen. Maybe he pops. But no, it's a really deep league in terms of quarterback play, and I think that gives them a chance to be more of a force come playoff time. I mean, we'll see who emerges from it. Is it one team for the Big 12? Is it 2? I don't know. But if you get a quarterback in there like a Sam Leavitt, for example, at Arizona State, who played in a college football playoff game last year, took Texas down to the wire. A guy like that I would trust to go out there and win a couple games in the playoff. And if Jalen Daniels can stay healthy, I mean, the sky's the limit for him at Kansas. And that's a team that nobody's even talking about. They're so far off the radar right now. And, I mean, you could even go down to the bottom of the league with the Big 12. And I think what makes it unique is that, Arizona might be projected to win 4 games depending on where you look, but I would take Noah Fifita over a lot of quarterbacks, not just in the Big 12, but in the country. And so you try him out there in any given game. I don't care who the opponent is. That's a guy who's going to give you a chance. And so that's a large part of the intrigue with the Big 12 is these really high caliber quarterbacks that the league was able to retain. A lot of these guys who have familiarity now in their systems. And I think that gives the Big 12 a chance to produce not just a couple of playoff teams, but maybe a team or two that can really go in there and challenge in the playoffs.
Well, it's an interesting thing to look at, and of course we keep our eye all the time on what's going on here in the Big 12, and we do love the parity, and at the same time when you see some of the adjustments that are made, you wonder if some of it's going to be for these bigger leagues than it is compared to conferences like the Big 12 that might eat its own this year. David Cobb, CBS Sports. You can get his byline right there. David, we appreciate you coming on the program, man. We'll have to have you on during the middle of the season here, see where those top 50 rankings end up.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, guys.
You bet.
Thanks, David.
David Cobb.